Hello everyone, welcome to the Wargaming Parrot. I'm David and today's video is going to be all about cockatiel sounds, behaviours and their meanings. This is effectively a part 2 because I have done videos on this topic in the past. However, I felt I should do another one to explain some inconsistencies, to add lots more different cockatiel sounds and behaviours and give you a comprehensive guide to all of them. I'm joined by Chip and Fish who will be starring in this video along with some clips from my patrons who very kindly submitted them. I'll have links to their Instagrams in the description so you can check them out. I'll also have links to the other videos so you can check them out too. In this video I am going to talk through each behaviour or sound, then going to show you examples so you can refer it back to your own cockatiels. Don't forget, cockatiels are individuals, so some of these sounds or behaviours may have individual traits, and also my two cockatiels are male, so if you have a female it may be slightly different. I want to talk about cockatiel baby noises. Now, cockatiel baby noises are often misconstrued as all sorts of other things like aggression, territorial behaviours, all sorts of different things. And it's just not true. So I've got a lovely example from Elsie and Stella, one of my patrons, who showed some of the baby noises that Elsie used to make. And I've also got an example of Chip doing angry noises later. So generally, baby noises will mean wanting attention, wanting to be fed, and it can continue into adulthood as well.
You having a tantrum? What's wrong? What's the matter?
Now, in contrast to cockatiel baby noises, you have something we like to call the angry or demon scream. And that normally is a scream that comes with like a different type of vocalization. It's not a baby noise, but it is a kind of like, get away from me, I'm annoyed noise. Generally, when a cockatiel is doing an angry scream, it is territorial or it is annoyance. But you'll be able to tell the difference between this scream and the baby noises in the previous clip. Tapping and frapping, for example, rapping the beak against something or tapping something continuously, tends to be a male behaviour, and it tends to be something related to territorial or curiosity. So if they're tapping things, it's kind of like saying, this is mine, stay away from it. Fish loves to tap my PlayStation 5. He thinks it's his. Obviously, I think it's mine. I'm not sure who's in the right. But generally, that's what that behaviour means. Singing is another incredibly common male cockatiel behaviour. Females will very, very rarely do this, but it tends to be a male thing because due to just the way they've evolved, the males need to sing to impress their mates, whereas the females just need to be impressed. They don't need to do any impressing. So you'll see your cockatiel singing, and if they are singing lots, it could be a good indicator that they are a male cockatiel. It's also not uncommon for males to sing to each other or to sing to you. As a behaviour, again, it tends to be a sort of like impression behaviour, trying to impress you, or they're just doing it because they're in generally good mood. The next behaviour I want to talk about is thrusting. If a cockatiel is thrusting, they'll tend to thrust up in a corner or in a nest area if it's an enclosed space. Thrusting can generally be an indicator of hormonal behaviour. If they're just thrusting and they're like frapping their beak around or they're hissing at you, that's generally an indicator of hormones, and it's something maybe you should be aware of and should be discouraged. It can also be a nesting behaviour, especially with females, and again, if you don't want your females to be laying eggs, it's something that needs to be discouraged through hormone management and also maybe potentially rearranging a cage to make that area a little bit less appealing. Something I used to think was unique to our two males, but something I've discovered recently is not, is barking. Now, cockatiels will make a barking-like noise, and barking is purely a kind of territorial or hormonal noise. It's a kind of noise they'll make if they consider something's theirs, much like with the frapping, but it can also be a sort of precursor noise to hormones. Because if they're barking lots, it means like, this is my area, this is my nesting area, get away from it. Cockatiels will also beak snap, and beak snapping is another lovely example of Chip sings a fish there. Beak snapping tends to be an attention-seeking behaviour, a curiosity behaviour, or sometimes getting ready to sing, so it can also be territorial. It's quite funny, and generally if your cockatiel's beak snapping, it means they're in a reasonably good mood and they're about to do something probably a bit cheeky or get to know you a little bit better by getting closer. I wanted to include this clip as well because cockatiels, especially males, even if they're siblings, if they're kept in the same environment, they will sometimes have scraps and fights. Now, generally, there's nothing to worry about with this. It's something that can be left alone. If your cockatiel is fighting with another one and they're just bashing their beaks together, they're raising their feet and they're sort of posturing and pushing like in the video example, that's okay to be allowed unless it goes too far. If your cockatiel is actively biting feet, they're biting wings, they're being highly aggressive, that is not okay and needs to be stepped in. There's a clear line, division line between the two behaviours. So I want to show you this one so you can kind of see what just a bit of scrapping between brothers is like, and then maybe you can compare it if there's a harsher bit of fighting going on in your house. Hissing is another very common cockatiel sound, and I want to talk about that in a bit more depth in this video, unlike in previous videos. Hissing generally means that your cockatiel is annoyed or scared, especially if they're doing a rocking motion like this. That will generally mean you should probably give them some space and work out what's scaring them. However, hissing, especially in males, can also mean a kind of territorial or curiosity noise. If it's just like a quick hiss, like that, it normally means they're not that scared, they're just being territorial about an area. If it's continuous hissing noise, it generally does mean they're fearful or they're protective. Behaviour I really like to see is head bowing. Now generally cockatiels will bow their heads if they want to be petted. Not always the case, sometimes they will kind of trick you and they're maybe a bit unsure if they want it or not, but if they're bowing their heads to each other or to you, it means they want to be preened, they want to be petted. So it's worth taking a risk sometimes and be very gently trying on the head and see if they want to be petted. A way of telling what your cockatiel is intent on is something we call forward eyes. They will angle their eyes right to the front as far as they can, and that means they're interested in something, they want to get to something, and then potentially want to eat something. So if you're seeing your cockatiel forward eyeing a piece of food, if it's alright for them, you can give it to them maybe. If it's one of your bits of food, maybe you want to move it away. Hold it away a bit, so... Head shaking is another common male cockatiel behaviour, although females can sometimes do it, and this tends to be a territorial or precursor to singing again, or hormonal behaviour. It comes into the same sort of family as beak snapping, frapping and barking. It's the same sort of thing. Fish does it an awful lot. He will start shaking his head just before he's about to sing, or if he's going to be sort of like telling Chip off for going too close to him. So this cockatiel behaviour we've just labelled for ease as the more. Now the more normally means that your cockatiel is going to have its beak sort of like partially open and they're almost lunging a little bit. That generally means they want to be left alone or you're just annoying them. Cockatiels don't like to bite as a rule. They won't just go out straight for a bite like most parrots. That's a last resort sort of thing. So they will try and warn you either by hissing, rocking or giving you the more, or the other cockatiels the more. And if that's ignored, then generally it will lead to a bite or a telling off by a bonking. So be very careful if you see them more, maybe work out why they're doing it or if they're just a little bit scared, and then maybe approach it in a different manner. A behaviour that almost all parrots do is preening, and that's just maintaining their feathers. Preening is very common, preening is very natural, and preening is something that all cockatiels will do lots. It also includes shaking afterwards or settling down, and generally if your cockatiel is preening, it means they're fairly relaxed, because if they're not, they probably won't preen because they're looking on alert and a bit worried about what's going on in the environment. Again, like most parrots, your cockatiel will get itchy, especially if they're molting, so you will see them scratch. They'll raise their claw, normally to their neck where it's a bit more difficult to preen, and they'll have a good scratch. Lots of dust will come out, lots of powdery down, maybe even feathers. Perfectly normal. Scratching is just generally a sign that the skin's a little bit irritated and they're trying to sort it out. When your cockatiel is relaxed, they may have a little rest, either in the cage or on you sometimes. When they're resting, they'll generally fluff up their feathers, they will kind of start winking, shutting their eye or one eye, and sometimes even tuck their head back. They'll also tuck their foot up generally, although not all cockatiels rest with one foot tucked up. Some do tend to rest with both foot down, but as a rule, they will tuck their foot up as well. And it's quite a cute thing to see, and it just shows they're relaxed and they're happy in their environment. This depends on the individual, but cockatiels do like to actually wash sometimes. Our brothers are kind of stinky, they only like to have the occasional wash, but it's worth offering. When a cockatiel's washing, or sometimes air bathing as well, because they love to do that, they will kind of lean forward, they'll fluff up their feathers, and they'll start flapping their wings in front of them, and like tucking their head back and doing all sorts of random movements as shown in the clip. And if they are doing that, you can encourage this by providing a water dish, or blowing on them, or even providing a very light mist. You don't want anything too heavy because that may put them off. Last clip I want to cover is yawning and crop clearing. Now, yawning is very natural to all of us when we're tired, and when a cockatiel is yawning, they'll just yawn like us. They'll open their mouth like, oh, and then shut it. Just means they're resting and relaxing. In contrast, you have another behaviour called crop clearing. Now, with crop clearing, it kind of looks like a yawn, but it'll be a repeated action and you'll see a bit of throat movement. So your cockatiel will be like yawning repeatedly, and that's more like a crop clearing behaviour, so it's not yawning. And it's very important to know the difference between the both, because if they're just yawning, it's going to be once. If the crop clearing, it's going to be repeated. And if they're doing it an awful lot, it may be worth checking out if there's something wrong with their crop or if there's any other signs of distress there. A vocalisation common to almost all cockatiels is flock calling, or sometimes what we call wicking. You can hear an example of it going on here with these two guys. They're kind of wicking to me and to each other. Chip just wants to be next to his brother basically, so let's just hold them there. But cockatiels will flock call for a variety of reasons, mainly for attention and to sort of check in with you or other birds in the house. They can sometimes do it when they're getting a bit nervous, or if there's very small wicks and flock calls, it can mostly mean they're just settling down like now and just communicating with each other, saying everything's okay and everything's happy. It's important to remember there's a big difference between a flock call, which is like a couple of wicks or a loud occasional wick, and excessive screaming or shouting, because that can be down to other reasons such as stress or anxiety, and it will be kind of distinctive. Rather than just the small wicks or the occasional louder ones check in, you will hear repeated loud wicking and loud noises and screaming, which is a very different type of behaviour. Something that's unique to males is something we like to call heart wings. And heart wings, again, is another one of those territorial, display or hormonal behaviours. And your cockatiel will, instead of rocking back and forth with their wings out, will march around the floor or march up and down with their wings out to the side and sing. It's important to differentiate the two. If your cockatiel's hissing and the wings are out and rocking back and forth, that is a male and female behaviour, and it's a nervous or stressed thing. If your cockatiel's marching around, happy, singing, tapping things, that tends to be a male behaviour, and it's just an expression of just what they do, really. You know, happy, territorial, I'm marching around being a big boss man. Now, as I mentioned before, I've got loads of other videos on this topic, and if you have a look through my channel, you'll see lots more on cockatiels and parrots in general. I actually have a playlist about cockatiels and their behaviours, and lots of other videos which you'll find useful, especially if you're new to having cockatiels. So everyone, thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this video useful, and it's going to be a very good reference for getting to know your cockatiel and their behaviours. If you have any questions or there's any other things you want clarified, please feel free to get in touch. But in the meantime, from me, from Fish and Chip, take care and have a really, really nice day.